Good morning. On behalf of Admiral Jim Robb, the President of NTSA, I'd like to welcome you to our first NTS webinar of the year. We're excited to have with us today the leadership of the ITSEC conference, the largest modeling and simulation conference of its type in the world. We're here today to reflect a bit on the tools, technologies, and capabilities evident at ITSEC 2021 that will propel us into the future of training. It is most exciting to think about which of these technologies and capabilities will create the next generation of our training systems. This can also guide us to determine what information is most helpful to you in industry, the government, and academia as we enter 2022 and plan for the future. That said, I know some of you who have registered also submitted questions for our leadership. If you have not done so yet, I would encourage you to use the questions tab, the Q&A tab that's available to you to post your questions. While we may not get to all of them today, given the number of speakers we will use these questions going forward in planning our future webinars. Likewise, we would like your feedback on the technologies and capabilities that you see as most salient into the future and areas for which you would like more information. If you could post those thoughts in the chat tab during our time together, we will also be reviewing that information following the webinar to shape the future events to best meet your needs and your interests. So comments in the chat tab and questions in the questions tab. So with all that, we're about to get started. Rather than provide long introductions, I will introduce each member of the leadership team as they speak. As you know, the Navy and Marine Corps were the lead services for ITSEC 2021. I would first like to introduce Captain Dan Covelli, the Navy executive for the ITSEC conference. Sir, over to you.
Thanks, Lynn. I want to thank you and NTSA for giving me the opportunity to speak today. And I'd like to say good morning, everybody. I want to start with a general observation. It's not all about the technology. It can't be. You can't put the cart before the horse or forget the training basics in search for new technology or the next big thing. It starts with performance, and primarily human performance is what it's going to start with, but some system performance and the training objectives. That's very important. All right. Now, the technology is needed to meet those objectives, and that comes with an in-depth analysis and media selection, and that's how you meet that objective. Now, advancing technology for the sake of technology without understanding how it does or does not cost effectively improve readiness is basically contrary to our training acquisition philosophy. You have to have the right tool for the right job. But there are some great capabilities I saw and technology I saw at ITSEC. A lot of AR, VR, XR, and MR in the papers, special events, and what I saw on the floor. Now, while itself it's not new, there was increased emphasis on the technology. It was good. We also had the gaming sector involved. They drive a lot of innovation, but we just need to ensure that their solutions add positive training value before we adopt them. It just goes back to what I said, what I started with about tech for the sake of tech. I did note, and there's a few things we still need to do when it comes to aviation simulator adoption that are going to need that could negate the need for those larger dome type simulators we've all become accustomed to now. The biggest thing I've noted is device field of view. We need to have the same field of view or larger than the human eye, particularly with the VR devices. If it's less than the human eye, basically it causes unnecessary head movement when you're doing instruments, when you're flying formation flight, coming inside and outside of the cockpit. That's negative training, causes that unnecessary head movement and a habit pattern in an airplane, especially during instrument conditions. That can lead to vertigo, which is not good. Something we don't want to do. Also, mixed reality devices are going to have to come into play. I need to be able to see my hands and the switches in the cockpit. It's too hard to do everything VR. We need to figure out some way to do that. So when I transition and look inside, I can see my instruments and they're accurate and I can touch things. Outside, obviously, VR. Inside is probably predominantly AR, but a mix. But once again, you have to do that analysis to figure out what's right. But we have to be able to get inside the cockpit a little more and do that transition. Also, I'd like to see a little more focus on the merger of haptics. We've come a long way, but that artificial feel for movement, pitch, roll, yaw, G-forces, big things, temperature, that could do a lot. Not required for everything though. So if you put that technology and everything, it's not affordable. But like for part task trainers and small mission trainers, probably not needed. But if it depends on what the training objective is, and if applied well, it should improve human performance and allow retention of knowledge and allow us to meet those training objectives more effectively. As far as tech barriers that you need attention, multi-domain warfare is one of them. An example of this is the mindset to overcome the merger of cyber and kinetic warfare. Non-kinetic and kinetic, you have to do them both. Like multi-domain warfare, there's a need to train to both simultaneously. But the training objectives are at cross purposes, but they're not mutually exclusive. The current doctrine embodies offensive and defensive multi-domain warfare. And you have to be proficient in that, so you have to train to that. And typically, we don't train to both simultaneously. I can't be expected to drop ordnance or do bombs in a contested environment if I can't practice to that, working through those effects. Same thing applies for the folks that are providing those non-kinetic effects. You can't be expected to do that without seeing the impacts on the friendly forces and even the enemy forces. Okay, so we just need to have a better, need to figure out better methodologies for merging the kinetic and non-kinetic effects in the training models together to get a blended solution. Second thing that would like to see some attention brought to is the automated cybersecurity solutions for unconnected systems. It's a tough problem to solve, likely going to require some new tech or even application of existing tech, but really infrastructure, policy, and processes. From a policy perspective, risk to a compromise of a connected system is lower than that of an unconnected system is lower than that of a connected system. Accordingly, our policies and our RMF approaches should properly address that fact. But regardless of the ultimate solution, that's a training barrier we have. We spend a lot of time and money trying to make sure those unconnected systems are patched. The Navy spends countless man hours and a lot of money doing that. So that's an area we need work on. A couple of hot topics of what is the next generation? I think it's going to be the Metaverse. It's all over the news. And given the history of other efforts and predictions, we talked about the holodeck and various AI initiatives. A lot of people are skeptical, saying it may not work. But I think it can. I think there's a lot of potential there. But there's two key things you need to think about before we go and implement. First thing is it the right medium to achieve that training objective, and is it cost effective as well? Because you can't use the highest tech for everything. Otherwise, it's unobtainium. It's not affordable on the training, and it's got to be affordable. So you have to use it for the right applications. And then finally, we have cross-service simulation interoperability, and that's a big one because that's the next generation of training requirements, joint and coalition events. We have to be able to do that, and currently it doesn't exist right now. And I don't mean just connected, I mean interoperable. If I pick up the phone and I call Japan, I'm connected. But if the person doesn't speak English, I'm not interoperable. So we have to be able to do that. We have to be able to talk back and forth with the systems. And there's no real governance process in place to do that right now. We need that. We need a data strategy. And we've talked about it, we've debated it, but a plan has never been formulated, agreed to, and implemented. And unless we have that governance and the resources that go along with it, that joint coalition, I'll call it aspirational training requirements, are never going to compete against individual service-specified vetted training requirements. So to be successful, the services and industry, need to pursue a common data strategy for that modeling, simulation, and training for those artifacts so we can advance that next generation of joint and coalition training. And before I pass the mic, I just want to say that innovation occurs at the intersections of technology. You don't know where it's going to come from. It often comes from non-traditional places and locations when you least expect it. And we have to have advocacy for it. We have to encourage those initiatives that cultivate innovation, because that will help not only develop next generation of training methodologies, but perhaps revolutionize them. That's why places like the Tech Grove, which is part of Naval X, and it's one of the tech bridges there, innovation hubs, and the events they have there, like the Armed Forces Game Jam and the Cyber Challenges, are great examples of how to do that. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, sir. You pointed out a couple really important things along the way, about the importance of process, that it's not all about the technology, it's also about the process and so forth. And also the whole integration of other senses into the AR/VR world, the haptic technologies, the olfactory technologies, and others. So thank you for those comments, sir. We appreciate that. We'll move on now to the Marine Corps, and representing the senior executive for the Marine Corps, Colonel Lara, is Mr. John Taylor. So John, over to you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So the Colonel is
John, we lost your audio. Oops, we lost John. Well, let's give him a minute to catch up, and while he's figuring that out, Colonel Kurian, why don't we see you on screen now? So we thank you. Colonel Kurian is going to be this year's, as those of you know, the host service for this year will be the Air Force, and Colonel Kurian is with us today to give some insights on the Air Force side. So maybe, sir, we'll turn to you first, and then we'll go back to John. How's that?
Great. Thanks, Linda. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, sir.
All right. Great. So again, I just want to thank NTSA for this opportunity to perhaps look back at ITSEC 2021 and then look forward to ITSEC 2022. Again, I just want to take a few minutes, perhaps, really first to thank Linda, Captain Covelli, and others who put together ITSEC 2021. Certainly, I think everyone I met was really passionate about solving warfighter problems, and then to share their, the vision for future of training. And so, I guess as I look to 2022, I think about big focus areas for me is really to have a sense of urgency within DoD at large, and in particular the Air Force, to make decisions about key technologies and then transition them not just to cyber phase 3s, but to programs of record. Technologies that will make a difference for the high-end fight, reduce lifecycle costs, provide agility in an evolving threat environment, the things that are interoperable, standards-based, et cetera. So again, I'm going to take perhaps more of an acquisition slant to what the focus areas ought to be. I think FY23 POM will be challenging for a lot of programs that don't directly contribute to the high-end fight. And therefore, a lot of our portfolios, especially in mine, we got to figure out where to take risks, what programs to break, so that we can focus on, what Chief of Staff of the Air Force wants us to go do. Throughout ITSEC, as I kind of roamed around the floor, a lot of companies have very promising tech base at various levels of maturity. But I think the challenge for us within the DoD is to actively think about how do we transition these things to various programs. And in some cases, what I saw was the technology is there. You've seen, you demonstrate a level of maturity. But as we think about specifically transition, some of that architecture needs to be tweaked, perhaps from a cloud-based to entirely cloud-based environment to perhaps a hybrid edge environment. We got to at times figure out how do we make the right tweaks for cyber for things that we care about within the DoD. In some areas, some of the stuff is, purely an unclassified environment, and then what do we need to do to take it to a higher classification level? Sharing of models. A lot of different companies have various ways of doing things, but when we think from a family assistance perspective, how do you ensure that we're buying once and reusing it many different times? So part of our challenge when I think about actively making decisions on transition is really to kind of narrow the trade space of which technology approaches, architecture elements are really promising, and then to make decisions in that space. So part of my challenge with a lot of my MAGCOM customers, I was at Global Strike yesterday, is really to help focus our SIBRs to figure out which ones we should take to the next level, and to develop capability roadmaps to show or to demonstrate how these things fit together to deliver capability. And so this is not just an Air Force issue, but I think we're trying to make sure that services, industry partners, and even policymakers are involved in this process. So as part of ITSEC 2022, I want to make sure that some of these key leaders, thought leaders, are part of our discussion panels, et cetera. And the other part that always keeps me up is creating the right flexibility within our financial process, our PPBE process, to make sure, as we come up with technologies that are ready for transition, that we don't have to wait 5 years from now, but that there is some flexibility within our budgeting process to make sure we have the right funding available to move out with things in the near term. So the theme for 2022 is it's time to act, accelerate change, to transform training. So I think the thing that always keeps me up is to understand, what General Brown tells us, in the event that we don't have any additional resources, manpower, et cetera, that we are empowered to make decisions, to prioritize what we need and to move out. So my challenge is really for my broader team is to really start thinking this way, because given our evolving threat environment that we face, we got to make some decisions in the near term. So that's kind of my opening comments, certainly open to questions and perhaps some closing remarks towards the end. Linda, back to you.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's great. I think there were quite a few questions that came in before the webinar about budget, about maximizing return on investment and so forth. So I think your comments relative to that are really apropos for the times that we find ourselves in. So thank you so much for that. I think we have, and just a reminder to folks in the audience to please put your questions in the Q&A. As I said, we will try to get to some of them in the open question and answer time that we'll have in a few minutes. And we'll also answer some of the questions that were asked prior to. So encourage you to continue to use that feature. John, let's see if it's working now, and maybe we can hear from the Marine Corps. How's that? No joy. Perhaps we can, I think we have Rob Miller from the Army, PEO STRI. Rob, are you on?
I am here. Can you hear me, Linda?
Yes, I think what we'll do, John, back to you for a minute, is maybe have you dial in and see if that can work for the sound. And Rob, we'll go ahead with PEO STRI and the Army's comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate NTSA inviting us to come do a little bit of an AAR here. I was thinking back, this is my 28th ITSEC, and with the down year last year, it was really impressive to see the team pull together and really put on a great event that we're used to from the history of ITSEC. So congratulations to the NTSA and all of the service team members for doing that. That was awesome. For my 5 minutes here, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the technologies that we saw and some of the barriers, but I think kind of overarching and throughout my presentation or my talk here, really what we're looking for from an Army perspective is, faster, better, cheaper. And, I know we always say that in the acquisition community, but I think more and more there has been pressure put on us, and I'm sure my other service partners, getting stuff out there faster, better, cheaper. So what does that mean to the M&S community? Well, that means, the ability to separate different technologies and have them integrate back together more easily. And I'll talk a little bit about standards and architectures and things like that that I think we should look at. But first, I wanted to just talk briefly about some of the technologies that we saw this year that I think are making progress. I think we continue to be interested in increased realism and battle space. The synthetic training environment is going to need that increased realism, and we saw quite a bit of that on the floor this year. So we were happy to see that, and hopefully that will continue. Also, operationalizing artificial intelligence, that was also something that we continue to look on. As I said, I've been around since for the last 28 years. We've probably been working on that for 28 years, but it feels like we're starting to gain some traction on AI and the effectiveness of AI in training simulations. So that was good to see. Also, a number of things on the floor talked about rapid prototyping. When I talk about faster, cheaper, better, that's what we need to get to within the community. We have to be able to quickly prototype things and show the value and get them integrated into the training world. So we were very happy to see that. some of the barriers I think that'll need attention in the future. I think COVID has definitely highlighted the fact that distributed training and education are going to be critical, and that consistent, secure, reliable networks that can support distributed training and bring the distributed training trainees together is going to be critical, and continued looking at that I think is going to be important. That might even be potentially something for a large event that we do. I know we've done in the past ITSEC, we've done a number of collaborative events when the services come together and do distributed, going all the way back to synthetic theater of war. If anybody goes back that far, Stowe, there's I see Bob smiling. That potentially some sort of event where we can demonstrate our ability within the community to do that distributed training and not have the latencies and things that have plagued us in the past, I think would be something great for future events. Also, anything that we could do from an industry standpoint to have industry-led standards, interfaces, and architectures so that we can take those different prototype systems and rapidly integrate them into an architecture that's well understood by the community, I think is going to be critical for our future. Let me transition a little bit to cyber threats. PEO STRI is very large into cyber, and one of the things that I can't go without saying is that we definitely have to be looking at cyber contested environments and how we do training. And this gets back to the architectures that we need within the environment that are cyber hardened, and so that we can integrate these capabilities that I talked about earlier into the systems and make them training ready, but also have them cyber hardened. So I think that's going to be a hot topic for the future. Also, cloud technologies. We have a number of systems that already have written into their requirements documents that they're going to be moved to the cloud. I think we need to continue looking at that and determine how the M&S community fits into that. I think it's, in a lot of cases, it's fairly obvious how that the cloud technologies can help us from a distributed standpoint and help us further the training realm from an M&S standpoint. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit, like Colonel Kurian, about the procurement system. And I know this is not the sexiest part of M&S and technology, but our procurement system, making it faster, those types of things is also important. We're doing a lot in digital engineering environments. So developing our systems so that they are compatible or that they utilize and leverage digital engineering type systems is going to be critical to us. And that might be potentially something for a session or a panel within the next couple ITSECs. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was investing in talent. I think everybody will agree that getting talent to work on in the M&S community is challenging. We just recently were recruiting engineering staff, and I think we probably only got about 30% of the available billets that we had. We had made a number of offers and just couldn't bring the talent in. So, that's something that we continue to look at, recruiting strategies, retention strategies for the talent. And I think that the ITSEC community, the NTSA community, and the sister services, if we could somehow bring some of this talent to ITSEC and show the exciting work that we're doing, that might allow us to do a better job in recruiting. I know we did a small recruiting session. I think we could potentially advertise that more and have a recruiting session to bring in some of this additional talent, and hopefully that will benefit all of us within the community. So I really appreciate this opportunity to talk. I apologize, Ms. Saunders is otherwise had other engagements, or else she would have been here. She's a huge advocate of this community and has been in this community for a very long time. And so I know that she would definitely like to say thank you to everyone within the community and thank everybody that takes all of the time and work to do this. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Rob. And a couple things that again that you mentioned. One is flexibility in the technology, and also the whole AI, the growth of AI, the synthetic environment. But certainly, we're learning flexibility today in the use of technology. We always have to be flexible and move around. So I think, John, you might be back with us, and maybe have figured out how we can communicate.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Okay, let's go.
So it's either third time's a charm or 3 strikes and you're out, one of the two. So I'm sitting in for Colonel Laura. We actually have 3 product managers, and they're doing change of charter on 2 of them this morning. So we've got some leadership swaps there. So kind of dovetailing on what Captain Covelli said, we were co-leads. So to be honest with you, with all the GOs and the panels and the extra help we were getting during ITSEC, we really had limited time to do any roaming. But I will say this, our force-on-force training solution, the man-worn training, and the live virtual constructor training environment, those are the primary technologies being highlighted by the Marine Corps. We are getting a lot of, in acquisition terms, a lot of help right now. Don't necessarily know that that's the kind we want, but we're getting more love and attention than we got in the past. So those are our focal points. That's the Commandant's focal point, and now we're getting the CT Training Education Command. That's his focal point as well. A couple of technical barriers that we were thinking about, non-laser-based tactical engagement capabilities, kind of what Kevin Covelli talked about. We got to figure out, and I know it's not an easy set, but there's a great demand for obviously reducing negative training, but we need to figure out a way to integrate the kinetic and the virtual training so the training is relatively seamless. We don't want to, all right, we got to put this on to do this, and then we got to put something else on to do this. So more seamless transition to that. We need to increase range capabilities to support our aviation assets. One of the things that the Commandant is interested in is, naval integration and the distributed virtual training environment, aviation integrated with the ground training systems. So that's a big ask, and we're not going to get there by the end of 22, but definitely something we're looking at. As others have said, cybersecurity, interoperability, ability to transition between high side, low side, connected and standalone systems. That goes back to my earlier comment a few minutes ago about the easy transition from what I'm doing in the training to what I'm doing in no kidding real engagements. We have to have the ability to make a better transition so we don't have to unplug something and plug in something else. Next generation hot topics, information age learning. I try to make sure I'm not repeating what others have already talked about, but there's a big migration in the traditional schoolhouse, classroom, pedagogy, greater focus on efficient training, at the point of need. And I would say, the master's I got, my second one I got, not pulling my own chain, but my second one I did with master's in education, I did that completely online. I never went to Auburn once, and it was all done, at my home. But we didn't embrace it like we embrace it now. We didn't embrace what we're doing right now, this webinar, a couple of years ago. We were like, we had to meet face to face. So there's a transition there, and we just got to figure out more, faster, better ways of doing it. And I want to say, better is sometimes the enemy of good enough. So I'm saying that we have to do it over and do it differently. just because we need to do it differently. And then to hammer home what Captain Covelli said, most of the times we get in our own way. We either get in our own way with policy, we get in our own way with tactics, techniques, and procedures. There's organizational mindsets that act as impediments for us to move forward on stuff. Think about before the pandemic, there wasn't a lot of embracing by the military leadership on telework. Now we can't do without it. It just takes a while to turn that aircraft carrier around in a different direction. It doesn't flip around like a speedboat. And then the last thing, MS&T industry, how can we move forward again? Talked about the non-laser-based tactical engagement capabilities. The last one, there's a couple of people have already covered, but
John, I think we lost you again. Okay. All right. We'll come back to John in the Q&A section, but thank you, John, for those comments. We got to hear the value of what you had to say. The conference, as you know, offers state-of-the-art technologies, papers, and presentations that also challenge the applications of these technologies, as well as the technical barriers and the capabilities we need for successful training and education. Key in the conference planning are our conference chairs and our program chairs. Our conference chairs provide the overall leadership and oversee all the detailed planning. And the program chairs provide the day-to-day leadership to ensure that the content of the program is rich and meets the needs of the M&S community into the future. We have with us today the 2021 conference chair and the 2022 program chair. I would first like to introduce the 2021 conference chair, Jennifer Arnold, for her comments. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you for all the talks that we've heard already today. ITSEC 2021 was incredible, and it was a true honor to be your conference chair. I wholeheartedly believe that we met the challenge of our theme, innovating and accelerating training, adapting to an unexpected future, and we're still envisioning and seeing an unexpected future. But we started with an incredible fireside chat with Admiral Robb, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and the Chief of Naval Operations. I don't believe that has ever happened in the history of ITSEC, so what an incredible way to start. Linda mentioned we had over 35 special events. So Rob, you threw out some challenges there on some content that you'd like to see this year, and I am looking forward to seeing Jim answer that challenge. We had 122 paper presentations, 23 tutorials, 10 professional workshops, and over 200 exhibitors showing these incredible, amazing technologies. Captain Covelli, I loved hearing you talk about these advanced technologies like Metaverse, AR, XR. I don't want to steal Bob's thunder, but his next big thing was absolutely incredible. And I can't wait to see what you do this year. Colonel Kurian, hearing you talk about acquisition strategies so that we can get these amazing technologies into the hands of our warfighters faster. I think we are all in absolute agreement with you on that strategy. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the team is going to do this year. Jim is already pulling together an incredible program, and so we are very excited. So I just want to say, last but not least, thank you again for entrusting me to be your conference chair, as well as a very special thank you to over 250 volunteers who always come together to make this happen. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jen. So Jen has passed the baton for the 2022 conference and program chairs who are now keeping their ears to the ground for all of you in our industry to bring new challenges, technologies, and initiatives to the surface for ITSEC 2022. Our 2022 program chair, Mr. Jim Threlfall, welcomes your thoughts and ideas on key future training needs. Jim, over to you.
Thanks, Linda, for the opportunity to address everybody on behalf of Matt Spruill, our conference chair who couldn't make it today, and myself, we welcome everybody to join us at ITSEC 2022 starting November 28th. As part of that, the theme for the conference this year is Accelerate Change by Transforming Training, with a tagline of It's Time to Act. The challenge to everybody is that the services have identified that in most cases, the solutions and the technology that they finally implement are somewhat outdated by the time that they're implemented. So again, the challenge from the services today that they identify are to potentially push up those prototypes, push up the acquisition process, and push the solutions to them quicker so that, again, the solutions are not outdated for our warfighters. If you haven't had the chance to visit the ITSEC 2022 website, I encourage you to go there. It has valuable information about the events, the activities, and the week-long events that take place that bring our community together. As part of that, we have submitted a presentation, call for presentations that went out to everybody. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, please do. It outlines the critical elements associated with special events that Jennifer has indicated the challenge of beating 34 events. It also outlines the submission to one of our 6 subcommittees for paper review and presentation. We also have a critical tutorial event that takes place on Monday, and we have a bookend on Friday of professional development workshops. So again, we have an exciting 1 week full of activities that start on Monday and end on Friday. So again, we invite everybody to join us in ITSEC and attend or present at one of those activities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim. We look forward to an exciting year. So as we pull together all the challenges of training and education, we're always looking forward. Each of our speakers identified what they see as kind of the next big thing. And to pull some of that together for us, I'd like to ask Bob Kleinhampel, conference lead for the next big thing, to offer his thoughts. So Bob?
Great, thank you, Linda. And it was a pleasure to help pull together the community to help identify what the next big thing is for ITSEC and our community that we serve. And you know, it was one of the things ITSEC wants to do is make sure we keep relevant to, you know, the warfighters and employees and everybody out there, and so that we can keep abreast of what the emerging technologies are, and as well as how to make sure that they're useful for us. And so we kind of identified these technologies, pick some that we need additional fertilizing to help it grow and pull it into the community. All right, so we formed the committee, and the committee was not just a committee that stood up special events for ITSEC. It was also a committee that through our collaboration, we are solving how to introduce it, how to make it better, how to make it relevant, the technologies. And that's what we're doing throughout the year. And then it culminated at ITSEC at a series of special events. And so we focused on a near horizon. Those technologies which are 1 or 2 years out that are ready, that need to be accelerated for adoption. And then we also focused on the longer term far horizon, and to identify what those future technologies are that we need to keep an eye on and start the conversation on, and bring them into, and then take action again on. It will eventually become the near horizon in the future. So that's how we were formed, and that's how we focused on it. And we had a series of special events that we culminated with at ITSEC. 2 of them focused on the near-term horizon, and both of them focused on extended realities. We had the talks, which was in a technical track, which had a series of people, primarily those developers that were developing the technologies that we use. And then we had the talks, the XR acceleration. That was more visionary, and how do we accelerate, and how do we help government adopt and realize the utility of extended realities that can happen today. You want to watch it, you want to kind of see, hey, make sure is it ready, and it will help them also come up with strategies to adopt those technologies to reduce risk, to realize the utility of it. And so those talks address that. And then we also had the tech vision, Innovation Megatrends, and that was a panel, a fireside chat kind of style panel where they looked at many technologies that are out there in the future and that we need to keep an eye on to ensure our relevance. And so, these venues that we designed, they were designed more for free flow thought, and we took the handcuffs up. There was some things discussed, I think challenged people's current perceptions and how they think what the rules of the road are or should be. And I think we challenged them, and we will continue to do that again in next year's ITSEC to allow a little bit of those handcuffs off and allow that free flow of discussion. And so, we can't, what I don't want to do is go in and say, here's what each one of these venues discuss. What I'm going to do is just kind of combine all these technologies and combine all these events that we did and discuss the series of technologies. Well, the prevailing topic, which really came and rose above all of them, and you've already heard it teased up by many of the previous speakers here, was the metaverse. And there's lots of layers to pick apart, and perhaps too many for this webinar. And so I'm not going to take that on here with you all here today. But, let me do a little teaser here for some upcoming events that I'd like you all to participate in and be involved in. And one, we got a webinar coming up, this series of NTSA webinars will be on the 23rd of February. And that's on demystifying the metaverse. We got a great panel of speakers that will be presenting at that, and NTSA is going to release the presenters of that here shortly, and we'll also mature that list here coming up as we get closer. Also in the planning, there's ModSim World in May, and there'll be a panel on the metaverse at ModSim World. We also have a leadership summit coming up in June. It's more of a legislative type of venue, and that will also be focused on the metaverse. And of course, next year's ITSEC, the next big thing, we'll have a series of special events, the talks and the panels, again, taking on and leaning forward and maturing. Metaverse, you can bet, will be, a primary focus of it, as well as we're going to have that far-term view. Now, quickly here, a little bit about the metaverse, though, just because, I got to describe it a little bit and tease it a little. A very simplistic definition, it's the 3D internet, quite simply put. I like to look at the metaverse and what it means, for maturity in our community, which is not entertainment focused. And so, you heard we were talking about in our committee, throughout the year. Then Meta came out with the big, hey, here's the metaverse, and but that was fantastic, and it really helped put a lot of energy behind it. And but I do want to caution us in our community is that has entertainment focus to it, and that's not us. We're not entertainment, but we are going to leverage the heck out of what the entertainment community is doing on that, and a huge investment to see what we can bring in here to our government user base. So what I'd like to do is draw it's parallel to what I think what we saw with serious games. And so the gaming industry was out there and huge investment in games from the entertainment type industry. And then what we did is leverage the games, and then we termed that serious games, and for the utility of humans and for the goodness of humans. And that's likewise how I see where metaverse is going to evolve, and almost we'll coin a little term here, the serious metaverse. I've heard other people call it the Fediverse, for the federal government. Lots of you guys are going to create all kinds of names for this. So, but I like to think of it that way, though, is really the metaverse for the benefit and the utility of the human, and to help us increase our performance in our day-to-day activities, be it whether you're a warfighter, whether you're a government civilian, whether you're a government organization and you're trying to better serve your clients and your user base. And the metaverse I think, will be there to try to help improve human performance throughout. So there's some layers for us to think of, that I think that sprung from our focus on accelerating XR. And, for example, maybe in these layers that, XR can be thought of more as the user interface to the metaverse, which it's allowing the human to interoperate, within the metaverse. Think mixed reality and augmented reality. You heard Captain Covelli tee that up earlier with us. And so I think other elements of the digital world for us to think about: how do we scale it? How do we make it accessible? How do we protect and secure it and us? Represent the physical world accurately? how can it anticipate our actions and needs? And so there's lots to unpack here and much for our community to engage on. And so I look forward to our what we're going to do as a community as we continue this dialogue up into, including, and I wouldn't say culminate at ITSEC, but we're going to kind of have a major point there at this upcoming year's ITSEC to have a great discussion further on that. But caution, let's not bend all we do as the metaverse. And I see people are already saying, hey, Metaverse has been all over the ITSEC trade show floor for years. Okay, yes and no. And I think we really got to kind of put it in perspective of what it really is. And we're going to be doing that throughout this year as we try to really start define and put perhaps a framework to it. Think of, the ubiquity, the ease of access to persistency and availability and other aspects which will be better understood. So anyways, now there were other topics that we discussed. The metaverse wasn't it, but it was quite honestly the prevailing topic. But also think about data. We all heard data talked a lot about throughout this conference, from really in the area of performance and help improving one's performance with that data. Having data follow the trainee, so the trainee can, as one moves from one simulation or simulator to another one, and have them be able to rapidly initialize that simulation, pick up where they left off. Also enabling the trainer, the people that are evaluating and watching and coaching the trainee, and giving that data, that those insights to help provide and raise the bar on the level of training. So lots there in that area. We also discussed in our the next big thing, artificial intelligence and machine learning. The ability to predict and anticipate one's actions to help improve us. Machine learning to help rapidly establish what right looks like and model the physical reality. And so right now we're doing a lot of knowledge engineering, but wow, if the machine can do a lot of that for us and start modeling the real world, that's very powerful, and do that in a rapid fashion. Also discussed a lot about digital twins, lots of layers to this. The various, from the individual systems, even the subsystems, to the entire world. And so having that digital twin of the world and the many aspects and the many layers of the world is very powerful, again, to our community to draw upon. And so lots of discussions on that. Then we kind of quickly teed up, and don't ask me questions on it, because these are some really bigger, larger, that there's experts out there. But we also talked about in these panels and talks, robotics, blockchain, hypersonics, colonization of space, you name it. And so we took on a lot, and I think there's a lot for our community to engage on and mature as we go forward. So that was the next big thing. It was quite exciting. Hopefully, for those that attended it, hopefully you got a lot out of it. You enjoyed the way it was presented, and in the way that we engaged the community, open for ideas for how do we do it better. Please get with me if you want to be part of the committee to help be part of the conversation as we move throughout the year. Feel free to please reach out to me. Happy to work with you all on that. All right, so that's it. Linda, over to you.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot. And a lot of challenges coming forward. So there were some questions. I want to switch gears a little bit. We do have a couple minutes for questions. And one of the prevailing questions, and probably primarily for the service execs, is back to some of the pragmatic issues of technology, that being how do we think the continuing resolution and the budgeting and all of the issues that we've got going on there is really going to affect our ability to really move boldly into the future. So I'll kind of open that up for whoever would like to tackle that first.
So sorry, Linda, technology is not my friend. I've just got to get to the mute button. I think that the CNO and the CMC said it best. It's very hard to work on an unpredictable budget, and it's their job. They're fighting that fight. Leadership, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, they're fighting that fight for us every day. Commandant's there doing that, making sure we can get the budgets, and making sure we have the resources that we need. What I have heard in every turn is training is being treated very favorably when it comes to the budget, because they realize you can't have this great equipment if you don't know how to use it. Okay, if you can't maximize the envelope, it does us no good. If you're going to treat an F-35 like an A4, once again, you have to be able to use what you use. So, and folks realize that. So training is important, and I think we'll get our fair share. And remember what I said about technology coming from the place you don't expect it. Okay. We've always been good at this in the training arena, is adopting technology that was not mainstream DoD and making it our own and running with it. So I think the budget will sort itself out. They will fight for it. I think training is going to be treated very well, as it has been in the last couple of years, and I think we're getting more dollars than we've gotten before. I think we're going to do fairly well.
Excellent. Anyone else? Colonel Kurian, it looks like you wanted to speak.
Sure. For a sustainment portfolio, that's predominantly what I have here. I've not seen major impacts with CR as far as keeping our ongoing stuff, as far as training stuff, lights on, et cetera, and continuing with our training programs. I think some of the challenges are perhaps more on the modernization side, where if you have new start programs, some of that's being delayed. So I think I've seen a few programs in that realm. I think the other thing I think we've got to make sure is, depending on how long the CR goes, there may be a windfall funding towards the end where people are not able to go execute. I think we'll be ready for that in terms of creating good contracting options for innovation efforts, et cetera, to move out with it. So I think part of the industry help that we need is to make sure, as we think through how long the CR goes, is to figure out what are those creative things we could be doing if we run into end of fiscal year type opportunities. Thanks.
Super. Thank you. Anything from Marine Corps or Army? Okay, we have a question that came in into the Q&A today. That's an interesting question. I would like some feedback on, and I'm going to read it because it's well written. The argument about the live virtual balance continues to be there, but doesn't seem to be any academic or intellectual input as to what that balance should be. My fear is that virtual is being touted mainly on cost-cutting reasons. Any thoughts from the panel would be welcome on this whole balance between live, virtual, and how we think through those issues.
But now I'll go if no one else wants to hit it.
Okay, great.
It depends, and I hate to say that. It depends on what the training objective is, how many airplanes are available at the time, what TTP you're going after, what training tactical procedure. It depends on the range availability and the constraints of the range, to whether you need to use go live, virtual, or constructive. So it really depends. If you don't have any airplanes available and you have the simulators to do distributed mission training that way, that's what's going to work best. If you have a mix of that, it depends on who needs what training when to do that. So that's why it depends. I mean, you could go all live or all virtual, but it depends on who's available when and what the training objectives are.
Okay. Any other comments to that, Bob?
Yeah, I think, and I'll jump on the part of the question that Trevor asked there, is in the the area about mainly being touted on cost-cutting reasons, and I think that's a fantastic value proposition behind what we do, because you got to have a good return on investment as to what we introduce. But I think it's not really cost cutting. I think there's some cultural changing aspects of how we pick and how we introduce some of these technologies for the right reasons. So I think those are also, going along with the it depends kind of answer. Is that there's a lot of balance that you've got to do in what you're trying to achieve, both training objectives, what you're trying to achieve organizationally within the organizations and the like. And so I think there's many value propositions. Cost is one of the many value proposition that you get, and it's great that if you can reduce costs, but if you're not achieving the training objectives, you're not achieving the perhaps the outcome that you were looking for, then the cost doesn't matter. So there's a big balance in all of this.
Hey Bob, I want to build on something you just said. That great points. What is the training objective? This is something that may not be apparent to everybody, but those that are in the military realize this. It's all about a buildup to being able to have that no kidding joint coalition battle group exercise where everyone is live and you're doing it for real. It's a build up to it. If you never get a chance to practice it, you'll never be able to do it in the airplane, on the ship, on the battlefield. So getting those reps and sets beforehand allows you to maximize live training in the actual assets. And God forbid, wartime or preserving the peace if you have to. So that's what it's all about. And that's why you want to have that capability. Reps and sets every day, train like you fight, and be able to do that.
And building on that a little bit, that we've talked a lot about the virtual environment and training, because of course that was the topic today. But one of the questions came in was, what about the concept of virtual evaluation for prototyping and experimentation? Does anyone have any thoughts relative to that and how the virtual environment would apply to those areas as well?
Well, we heard discussion, through this question, I think of, the experimentation community, and though, yes, ITSEC is, a lot of the technologies are focused on training, but also the experimentation community is definitely addressed. I came up originally when I was in the military through experimentation and my use cases. And you see, now I think we see a lot of discussion about and I saw it on the floor with the digital twin and digital engineering, and how these modeling, simulation, and even extended reality technologies can be to the benefit for digital engineering purposes. Being able to explode out the subparts and articulate them of systems, and be able to explore them from ways in which you can't. Having an actual digital twin to model in your development of a future system is very important, and the accuracy and fidelity of that is very important. And so, I think it is being addressed by this community. And I think it is a growing, that community, the research, development, engineering, concept development, experimentation community, I think is becoming a more served part of the ITSEC community, and they're embraced. At least I hope they're embraced. I feel embraced by them when I was there.
Bob, the only thing I'll add to that is the efficiency as well. You talk about the fidelity, but what we're finding is that digital twins are allowing us to get these systems out faster, right? So back to the acquisition, using creative acquisition methods like OTAs, as Colonel Kurian didn't point out OTAs, but creative acquisitions to model faster, digital twin, get the efficiencies in place, and then get those out into the hands of our warfighters faster. So we're seeing great results from that. I anticipate that life cycle is only going to go faster and faster as we evolve.
One more quick question. Several of you mentioned cyber and the emphasis on cyber and the future emphasis. What about cyber war game solutions? Do you think there'll be more emphasis going forward on war game environments and cyber particularly?
I mean, I can take that. This is Rob. I think that absolutely that we will continue to expand the cyber environment from a defensive cyber, offensive cyber, force-on-force type systems, where we will have additional work on that. The persistent cyber training environment is continuing down that realm, and I know that U.S. Cybercom is continuing to provide feedback on that, and expanding the role from where we are now with the cyber mission forces to larger and larger audiences.
Great, thank you, Rob. So much more to come on that front. It sounds like that's terrific.
And
so I think go ahead. Who is that?
It goes into what I said though about multi-domain. You can't just do one. There should be, obviously you have to have standalone cyber warfare training, building blocks, but we have to focus on doing multi-domain, kinetic and non-kinetic at the same time. Otherwise, you don't know if you're hurting your friendly forces or the intended effect of hurting your enemy forces if they're not trying to do stuff at the same time there. But I definitely agree that there needs to be more in that arena.
So as our technology becomes more complex, so do the issues we need to address along the way. So that's terrific. Thank you so much. So before we close out for the day, I did want to turn it back to Colonel Kurian. By the way, your questions will be logged, and we will be answering them through the course of the year. If there are specific questions you would like answered, we're happy to, all of the presenters will be getting copies of the questions, and we'll have the opportunity to respond to those as well. So we appreciate all the inputs that you provided. And Colonel Kurian, can you kick us off for looking forward to 2022 in closing?
Yes, certainly great conversation today. Great ITSEC 2021. Lots of challenges that we heard about to go work on for 2022. Definitely want to make sure, as Jen and team did a phenomenal job, right, in terms of keeping it relevant for the warfighter, challenging our perceptions, right? So I think it's a phenomenal year. So looking forward to all the engagements. And I think the goodness about this community is we need strong collaboration to work these problems. We can't do it on our own. So I think as we think about 2022, really trying to move the needle in terms of transition opportunities, focusing on really investing in key set of technologies that are near term, and then to kind of explore the longer term opportunities as well. So looking forward to working with all of you. Again, I think the big tagline is it's time to act. So again, please provide your inputs to our leadership team, and we'll do our best to make sure it's a really worthwhile engagement. All right, Linda, back to you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So first of all, let me thank all the conference leadership, the services for their insights and for your time today. I also want to thank all the attendees for your comments, both in the chat and in the Q&A. This information, as I said, will be used to guide us in the planning for the future to make sure that we are addressing the topics of most interest to you all. As Bob addressed a little bit earlier, our next webinar will discuss the Metaverse and what are its challenges? What does it mean for training and education in the future? So we welcome you to join us the last Wednesday of the month, February 23rd at 11 o'clock Eastern. And until then, have a great month of bringing new ideas to the forefront, and have a great day. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.